The game is obviously the most important of the season, and the way that Ohio State prepares is with one, media availability. That makes Talking Tuesday the most important of the season as well. There's no other chance to get the information from Ohio State and the captains as they get ready for rival Michigan on Saturday at noon in the Horseshoe. So welcome to the podcast daily for a Talking Tuesday with Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. Bill, we are getting Ryan Day. We are getting the four captains, and we're getting Will Howard, who has already kicked off rivalry week in fashion after the game on Saturday night. I think it's going to be informative, entertaining. I can't wait. It's the biggest Talking Tuesday of the year.
I'm looking forward to it. I liked what Will was saying after the game. I think Ohio State fans really liked what Will was saying after the game because, and I don't honestly disagree with it. I think some of the stuff we've heard in years past about like, oh, it's just another game. Like, whether you believe it or not, it's like you shouldn't say it. So I'm glad that Will Howard has not taken that tact with this game thus far. I assume he will not do that when we talk to him later on Tuesday. Ryan Day has never done that, so I don't think we'll hear much of that. And just every time Ohio State plays the penultimate game or the penultimate game of the regular season before the Michigan game, there's always the how quickly do you turn your attention to Michigan questions, and those were asked after the game on Saturday. But the answers I thought had a little bit of a different edge to them, especially from Jack Sawyer. So I'm eager for some of the information we're going to get on Tuesday, certainly, but also just kind of eager to see what the vibes are because Ohio State seemed pretty keyed up at about 3:30 on Saturday afternoon for the Michigan game.
Yeah, just forewarning, if you thought that Talking Tuesday this week was going to be nothing but ball, sorry, there is going to be some emotions, some analysis of vibes. Like it's a rivalry game. And if you're supposed to throw the records out, which Michigan would very much like everyone to do this week, a lot of that will come down to mentality. So I do think it begins there, and it did already start that way on Saturday. We know that Will Howard is a bit of a college football and Big Ten historian. I wonder if he looked at the last couple of years and he's like, CJ Stroud said it was just another game. Kyle McCord was talking about not making mistakes. I'm going to not do either of those things. Watch this. I'm going to lean fully into Buckeye Nation and Ryan Day and winning for the seniors. Like, I wonder, I don't expect him to really say anything different than he did on Saturday because he was one of those people that was like, the Indiana game is over and the rivalry game is here. So I don't know that he could do it any differently than he already has.
I don't think that he can or that he will. And I also I don't mean for the way that you and I are talking about this come off of us like suggesting that it's performative. Like I believe that Will believes it, right? I think he's wired that way. I do think like being from Pennsylvania, from being from Big Ten country. Obviously, Kyle McCord was from New Jersey, so it's not quite the same thing, but it's nearly the same thing. East Philadelphia, as some might call it. I do think that helps Will kind of frame his mind a little more. Maybe we can ask him that. I don't want to speak for him, but when you can get that tone set from your quarterback for a game like this, I think it goes a long way. And I understand that this will be Will's first and only foray into the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, but he seems to have a pretty good grasp on what it means and the mentality needed in the approach to this game. And I think it's going to serve him and the Buckeyes well.
Yeah. And then, for the rest of that group, when you're talking about Jack Sawyer and Travion Henderson and Cody Simon and Emeka Ibuka, like, I don't know what else they can say either. And a couple of those guys were available after the game on Saturday. I don't know. They've already been asked multiple times throughout their career last year. And I brought this up, had a conversation with Emeka, I guess it was during Buck 9, where it was like the only time that I ever felt like he got legitimately angry. He's so polished. He's so great to talk to. He does speak from his heart at all times. But I remember asking him last year, about coming up short, not winning a set of gold pants and how that motivates. And like, that was the first time that I saw like blood boiling behind his eyes. Like, so what else can they say about it? We have to ask, the motivation. This is the game that they came back to play. How much is that a driving factor? Like the obvious questions are part of the press conference. Like you have to check those boxes. But, I feel like what different answer can we possibly get from them? This has been the same thing for the last several years. And we know that this is why they came back. And we know that it's not a game that they would fast forward through or just like go right to the college football playoff to win a national championship. Like everything, their identities, their careers, their legacies, the things that they thought they were going to accomplish multiple times over at Ohio State have not been done. So, I don't expect them to answer it in any different way, but I'll be curious to what lengths they want to do that publicly.
Yeah, I don't know that they'll be information wise, like nothing too illuminating by the conversation as it pertains to that, like the emotions of the game. Like I think we have a pretty good feeling for it. Some of the captains too might be able to shine some light though on some of the more football pertinent aspects of this game, like the matchups, things like that. So that'll be good to hear from those guys too. But yeah, I don't know. We know like what you're supposed to say and what guys probably will say about this game. It's more maybe how it's said than what they say that I think will be most interesting.
Do you think? I think the answer is no. What chance do you believe there is that one of these captains would guarantee victory, and who would be the most likely to do it?
I don't know that though. I think there's I mean, it has happened in the history of the rivalry, I suppose. And there's probably a little too much savviness and respect for this thing for anybody to do that. And honestly, like if you're Ohio State, it's not that you take anything for granted in this game, but they've been watching the film. They know what Michigan's season has been. They know what their own season has been. And, rarely I think is this game like an absolute butt kicking on either side. So I'm not saying that Ohio State expects to do that, but if someone feels like they need to say something like that, then just save it and do it on the field, right? I think they know that. So I would be pretty shocked if that were to happen. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to guess who's most likely to say it. I won't. I'll reserve that prediction.
Yeah, I don't say that because I think it's going to happen because I don't believe that it will. I just I'm just kicking around the idea. It's a little talking Tuesday. Just get it out there. But the answer is Jack Sawyer. I mean, that is.
I mean, you said it, not me. So
if somebody does it, it's going to be Jack Sawyer.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no. And also to your point, like what you're talking about over the course of the season, you don't need to give Michigan any additional motivation. Like they have nothing to lose as it is. So whether you're trying to, kick up the hornet's nest or add an additional, fight to the pregame, like it's unnecessary. I just bring it up in good fun because we do know that some of these guys are more than willing to speak their mind, and I hope they do. Not in a way that crosses the line. I mean, they can talk about wanting respect and they can talk about accomplishing those things, but if somebody deep down feels like that's where they want to stamp their flag this week, like don't be afraid to. But don't do it just for the sake of attention or whatever else. But follow your heart. That's my words of wisdom for senior day for Ohio State.
I like it. It's good. It's good. It's good advice, no matter what time of year it is. So
that's right. Just clip it and save it. And
that's right.
If ever you're in need of some advice from the podcast daily, which I hope is never, just listen to me say, follow your heart. I do think that you would probably want to know about the offensive line grades on Saturday.
Yeah, I would. I watching it. I felt like Carson Hinsman played pretty well. Austin Sareveld, and I would say Austin Sareveld probably played about how I expected, which is a little up and down, but it wasn't a disaster. I think Tegra Shabola needs to find some better form than he has had lately, and I mentioned those three guys on the interior because we know what Michigan's bringing to the table with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, but really the whole defensive line is quite good. Josiah Stewart has played well. Derek Moore has played well. So this is a good front. This is, I think, collectively the best front that Ohio State has seen this year. Now the last time they had I thought Indiana was a pretty good challenge and actually gave them a pretty good fight, but Penn State was something different, and I thought the offensive line acquitted itself pretty well there, with the exception of a couple of Abdul Carter sacks. But I think you almost live with that, with the rest of the performance being what it was in that game. So here comes another similar challenge, and yet more shuffling along Ohio State's offensive line as it prepares to deal with that. So I would like to know what Ryan Day thought of that group, probably the guards specifically, because that is the pathway for Michigan to make this more interesting than I think it should be, just based off the rest of the matchups, right? So that is by far the strength of Michigan. It is, and I mean, like by far the strength of Michigan, even though Michigan is coming off of probably its most complete performance of the season at boat race Northwestern last week. But I I think Ryan Day has been pretty honest in his assessment of the offensive line this year. So I wouldn't expect anything less coming off of the Indiana game. And I'm not saying he should be feeling bad about it either, but I just want to know what the vibes are, I guess, with that group going into this matchup that is going to be, I think, the spot that everyone is watching when that game kicks off on Saturday.
Yeah, we would have been saying that, to be fair, even if Ohio State was fully healthy.
Yeah,
they had Seth McLaughlin and Josh Simmons. Like, that's still where this game is going to have to be won, and it wouldn't change the fact that is, you said, it's the strength of Michigan's team. It might be the only strength of this team, and I don't want that to sound too dismissive of them overall. Like, I know it's a rivalry game. I know emotions are going to fuel this, and we've seen lesser Michigan teams. Like, the second version of the game that I ever covered in 2013 was a dramatically overmatched Michigan team that nearly pulled an upset with a 2-point conversion in the fourth quarter. So, like, I'm not saying that to say that, like, Michigan can't compete in this game, but they were also open as a 23-point underdog for a reason. They have been, horrific to watch throwing the football. The running backs have not been as good as they were projected to be. The offensive line has not been a Joe Moore Award candidate group the way it has been for the last several years. The receivers are not good. But defensively, nothing has changed from that start of the year to now. Like, they are still very good up front. Some of the pieces at linebacker and in the secondary have been up and down. Will Johnson has been primarily out with scouting property in Malibu, I think. But that if you're going to win this
NFL draftitis,
he's got one of those. But if you're for Ohio State to score, and win the game and send a message the way that they might want to, it was always going to come down to those five guys up front.
Mm-hmm.
That conversation has more to do now, I guess, with the transition that they've had to make with personnel. But, like, we would have been talking about them no matter what.
Yeah, and it's not just the interior. Like, as I said, that the ends for Michigan have played pretty well, and they'll roll probably 6-7 guys up there too. So it's equally as important for Josh Fryer and Donovan Jackson to play well in this game. You just know, like, what you're going to get at the tackle position. And honestly, like, it was a concern of mine going into the game last year too. And I know how the game ended with interior pressure, but it wasn't like that was Ohio State's undoing the entire game, right? So, like, it's a similar defensive front, I think, to last year. Maybe it's slightly better on the edges than it was last year for Michigan. But Ohio State, I thought, did a nice job, all things considered, on the road, like giving itself a chance last year. So I certainly believe Ohio State has a chance this year. I just Tedgar Chabola in particular, I think, is the most interesting to me, because I don't know. I know he got hurt in the Oregon game and has continued to play and not really missed much time aside from missing some snaps in that Oregon game. I do wonder if he's 100%, or if there's anything contributing to just I don't know if it's a dip in play. It just seems like a stagnation in play. I just don't know if you've seen him get consistently better throughout the course of the season. I think he's kind of the same guy he was in September, which is not necessarily where you want to be. So they just need to find a way to get those five to play the best they can. Like, I understand being shorthanded and having to move pieces around the way they have is challenging. So I'm not looking for the best offensive line game anyone's ever seen necessarily, but they had to do it once, or actually they did it more than once. But when they had to do it the last time in a matchup like this on the road against Penn State, I thought it went really well. And it just seems like a big ask for it to go really well a second time when you're in that similar situation. But that has to be the case for Ohio State the rest of the year, right? This isn't changing. So, and they're going to play nothing but good defenses the rest of the way, no matter what happens over the next couple of weeks, with the Big Ten championship or anything like that. So, I basically want to hear if Ryan Day will be willing to kind of divulge some more, like, the grades, and he's even said, like, who was close and who wasn't with some of the stuff, which I've just found, like, really enlightening, and it's helped, like, analyzing the offensive line this year. So, it's a big game week. Maybe he won't be so open to doing that, but I kind of hope that he is.
Yeah, and in that same vein, the things that he will or won't talk about in depth before getting ready for the rivalry. Like, I did not think that Jeremiah Smith was at 100% on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
There were long stretches where he was little more than a decoy. Now, he made plays, and he certainly was still doing alien-like activities when he took the end around and, like, was able to get to full speed there. Made a couple of nice catches. But it didn't feel like it was Indiana purposefully trying to take Jeremiah Smith out of the game. Although they were paying a good amount of attention to him, I think Ohio State sort of knew that putting 10 to 12 touches on his shoulders in that game was not going to be a good use of their time or energy. And he had, both of the ankles were taped up. So it's not like, he was clearly favoring one over the other, but he was limping in pregame, I thought, noticeably. And that carried over from Wednesday night. So I don't know how close to 100% he will be on Saturday, but this is the time of the year where you might never be at 100%. So how does that impact Ohio State's thinking this week? Is he going to gain some more strength as you go on? You'd think so, but that's again where somewhere I'll be looking, because he is just so critical to tapping into the full potential of this offense.
Yeah, I think on the health front, especially because this will be the only time we talk to Ryan Day this week, I think that's up there pretty high. Is like where exactly is Jeremiah? What they felt like they saw out of Will Kasmarek, who played, but I think if he were 100% healthy, would have played more than he did against Indiana. I know like Bennett Christian got dinged up for a minute there, and then I think he came back in that game. Might have been it. I can't recall anything else. So yeah, you're right. Everyone's dealing with something this time of year. So like rarely are people going to be 100% healthy when you're going into the last game of the regular season, but especially with Jeremiah, like that's a key spot, because Michigan's secondary is vulnerable. Like the Michigan's pass defense has taken a pretty serious dip this year. And especially with Will Johnson not playing, this is a game where I guess as long as the weather permits it, that Will Howard and these receivers should be able to have a pretty nice day, provided they can protect Will Howard. So you obviously want Jeremiah Smith at or as close to 100% as possible for that.
And it did feel overall like Ohio State's ability to pass protect was probably stronger than the run blocking and the holes and all that stuff. Certainly thinking about, the breakdowns in the red zone, especially. I think that's where Ohio State's probably going to be okay. And guess what? They are capable of leaning on the passing attack to beat Michigan or beat anybody else, because Will Howard is playing at a very high level, and he's got the best cast of wide receivers in the country, plus Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, who can do some things out of the backfield. So we'll see if that's the way Ohio State goes. Like, we're not going to get the game plan or the playbook ahead of this matchup, which is, we certainly understand that. But, quarterbacks, it comes down to it, and play calling when Chip Kelly's got a chance here. I do wonder if this could be a game where Ohio State decides to push the tempo a little bit more. We know that they've purposefully not done that through 11 games. So maybe there's just no sense in altering that approach right now. But there has been some part of my brain that's thought, well, maybe you get to the end of the year and it's like you can start throwing some of that caution out the window and because once they get into 2-minute situations, like zip, 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 zip right down the field, like I think they're capable of doing that. They just don't really want to. But maybe the game and the rivalry alters that thinking a little bit.
Yeah, this certainly won't be divulged on Tuesday, but I'm wondering the same thing. Like, what's the curveball that Ohio State's going to try to throw at Michigan? Chip Kelly's done a nice job of having something new basically every week. But the one thing, I guess there's like 2/3 things that I've kind of been waiting on. One is pushing the pace a little more. 2 is running Will Howard more. And 3 is getting like more vertical in the passing game. And I wouldn't be shocked if all of those three show up on Saturday, because I think I've said this before. We tend to give coaches a little too much credit sometimes on like holding stuff back. I don't think they're doing it nearly as much as we suggest they might be, but I think this is a game where you do hold stuff back, right? So I'm expecting to see something new from Ohio State, but on both sides of the ball. Like Jim Knowles will probably throw some different blitzes at Michigan too. We're not going to talk.
What does he have left?
Well, we haven't seen a whole lot of like, we've seen some, but I don't know we've seen a lot of like Jordan Hancock, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs like getting in the mix on some of these pressures, right? I've seen a little bit, but I think there's more there. So that's what I'm on alert for on that side of the ball. And then on offense, it's like, any number of things. I guess it could be, but there'll be something tangibly or noticeably different about Ohio State in this game that we haven't seen yet.
I mean, Cody Simon and Jack Sawyer might give you some insight on those blitz packages.
They're too savvy for that. There is there is a precision with their blitzing right now that is pretty impressive and fun to watch. I do want to ask about that. And Doug and I were talking about this on Sunday that, in 2022, it felt like in a lot of ways that Tommy Eichenberg was just like an extension of Jim Knowles on the field. And Jim Knowles, I think, said that multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly feels like Cody Simon is in that mold right now too. So I wouldn't mind asking Cody about that as well. Like just kind of the relationship that he and Jim Knowles have, like how much they think alike, and then how much that is leading to what we've seen from Cody the last few weeks. He's been playing like one of the best linebackers in the country, in my opinion.
When we spent, I don't know, the previous 11 months, position previews, schematic breakdowns, projection of how this is going to look. Is CJ Hicks or Mitchell Melton going to play the jack? How great of a blitzer could Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese be if they get turned loose? I don't know that we ever said, who the best blitzer is on this team? It's Cody Simon.
Yeah. No, it never crossed my mind. I mean, he is far more athletic, I think, than certainly I've given him credit for in the past. So I'm not surprised that he looks so explosive at times. But yeah, that was never front of mind for me when I was trying to figure out who might be the guy who terrorizes offense in the way that Cody Simon is currently doing it.
I think too, you can look back to previous games and previous weeks. Like he can be the sacrificial lamb as a blitzer just as well as he can get to the quarterback. He is doing things at a very high level. It's not getting, I don't think, enough appreciation nationally. I've been saying that for several weeks. It's going to be amusing to me when he wins the Big Ten Linebacker of the Year award and is not even remotely in the conversation for the Buckeyes.
Yeah. The Buckeyes Award finalists came out on Monday, and it's like 3 SEC guys, Clemson's Barrett Carter, and a guy from UCLA.
Good job, voters.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the SEC is really awesome this year too. So good for them. Remember when Alabama had 2 finalists for that award, and then they lost to Oklahoma, who hadn't scored in like 7 weeks against anybody? Yeah. Great job, folks. Oh wait, that's Kings of the North. That's a different show. Never mind.
That's all right.
All right. Anything else that is front of mind with the captains, Will Howard or Ryan Day?
IGB and like the penalty stuff, and we've asked about it a few weeks in a row now, but this was probably we had 3 against Indiana. He is, according to PFF now, I think officially the most penalized defensive player in college football, and one off of being tied to be the most penalized player on either side of the ball in college football. And like, I think there's like some conversation about whether or not you should even put him out there when he's racking up penalties at that rate. I definitely think you should, because he also does some good things, but we saw Jermaine Matthews play probably the most in a rotational role on the outside than we've seen so far against Indiana. And part of that, I'm sure, is that Jermaine Matthews has been practicing well and earning some of that time, but also I totally get if it's wanting to limit some of the opportunities for Davis Igbinosun to get flagged for a defensive pass interference penalty too. So I guess that's for Ryan Day, since Jim Knowles isn't going to talk, but I maybe the question is like how much of that is because Jermaine is playing well and you want to have him out there, and how much of it is because you're worried about the rate at which IGB is getting those penalties.
Yeah, it's hard not to notice when he's out, when Jermaine Matthews is on the field in place of either Denzel Burke or Davis Igbinosun, not just because he's been playing pretty well, but also because you're talking about 2 players who came into the year with potential first-round draft pick status, and we've been paying closer attention to everything that's been going on at corner since the Oregon game. 4 of the last 5 games, he's had at least 20. Jermaine Matthews has had at least 26 snaps. It felt to me like he had more than that on Saturday. He actually had 3 of those other 4 games into the 30s or into the 40s. So that was actually slightly down from what he'd been getting, but it didn't feel that way to me. I don't know why.
Well, I think he was playing more in the second half of some of the games the last few weeks. Maybe I'm wrong. This felt because there was the first team defense was out there for the whole game for this one, so it wasn't like there were garbage time snaps available necessarily.
Yeah, it sounds like a thing that I'll need to take a closer look at, but because I was surprised when I saw that on Monday, just to start thinking about some of the grades, some of the analysis, and some of the way that we're going to talk about, because it seems in some ways like silly to talk about the corners in this game because Michigan's passing attack is so ridiculously inept, but you still have to go out and win those matchups, and it's not like Michigan can afford to not pass at all in this game. Like that, I don't think there's a winning formula for them if they run it 45 times against Ohio State.
Right. But I also think that whatever, like Ohio State's going to play with 7 guys in the box the whole game too. So like those corners, whoever's out there, those corners are going to probably have little to no help for much of the game.
Yeah. Also a good point. That's why I rely on you to get set for Talking Tuesday in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Can't wait to get in there. Can't wait to keep bringing you coverage ahead of the game all week long on the podcast. We have way more coming. I promise you. You won't want to miss anything. So make sure you're subscribed across all the audio platforms, or if you're right here on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe, hit the bell. You can like if you want to. You don't have to. That's up to you. But we do like it if you do it. All right. And Thanksgiving week rolling along as well. So we know it's a busy time, but we're going to keep cranking away to get ready for Ohio State. Michigan will be dropping some snap judgments later on today once we get into the Woody. So stick around for those too. For Bill Landis, I am Austin Ward. We appreciate you joining us on Talking Tuesday on the Podcast Daily. We'll see you later.